The first time I saw him was at this meet when he came and nobody knew who the hell he was. I looked at those magic feet, and the next thing we knew was we were getting ready to go to Minnesota, and he'd gone to Pan Americans and won them faster than anybody had swam in a long, long time. I think he broke 101.
Some breaststrokers are more front wheel drive. He's definitely with back wheels, okay? He's got the tremendous legs, great legs, and he's using it to the fullest.
He has so much moxie for a swimmer. He has so much fight in him. You know, it's always interesting to me to see someone that's willing to stand out and say, I'm going to do something, and be willing to say it and put the pressure on himself, and then still be able to stand up to the blocks and be able to perform and get the job done.
Whenever I'm at a meet that he's at, I make sure that I tell my team if they're not swimming in the breaststroke against him, that they're watching him, because that's how it should be done.
Just outstanding, magic feet.
Ed's breaststroke is very, very consistent. He does not rush his stroke. He rides his stroke very well. He gets everything out of his kick. When his timing is on, it is absolutely perfection.
What I see in Ed is being so conscious about technique, every little detail of the stroke, and obviously he's got a great talent.
I do a lot of filming of athletes, and I travel around to a lot of clubs in the country. There's no other breaststroke I use to demonstrate skill underwater than Ed. I mean, Ed is probably one of the best athletes I've seen in breaststroke that gets his body lined up exactly right. I don't know how many national team athletes I've put on the screen along with Ed in a split screen format. I don't have to say anything. They just look at it and they say, wow. And they say, man, I really need to get lined up a lot better. I need to be a lot more like Ed.
Of course, history shows us that he was the first man to break a minute on a relay split and helped us to win the gold medal and break the world record.
Most world record holders look back on a long history of competition after reaching the pinnacle reserved for the best of the best. Not Ed Moses. Favoring golf clubs and a soccer ball, Ed carried a swimsuit only 3 months of the year until his senior year in high school. Then, within 1 year of accepting the challenge to take on senior training at the Curlberg Swim Club, Ed went from seasonal athlete to 15th in the world in the 100-meter breaststroke. The year was 1998, and the ride hasn't stopped. Ed's aggressive and thorough preparation defined him both in and out of the water. His constant push to perfection brings passion to his preparation. His core strength, flexibility, combined with a mind that demands to stay on the forefront of the learning curve of his sport, is what makes him a true champion. Breaststroke, according to Moses, is an in-depth look at Ed Moses, the person and the process that is his gold medal winning form.
You gave up swimming at 10 years old, took up golf, took up soccer. Not exactly the normal path to becoming the world's best. Can you say that there were some things that you picked up in your other sports that helped you to become world ranked?
I think it was just an overall athleticism that I had. When I stopped swimming, I did other sports and I did them well. You know, I participated, like you said, in basketball, baseball, soccer, and it was just that drive that I had to be the best in whatever I'm doing to win. You know, whether that was out there playing all day or swimming all day. I didn't know what it was, but it was a combination of hating to lose and wanting to win at all costs.
How do you account for such a quick entry into year-round training and then going all the way to a professional level so quickly?
I think that step has to come from within. Again, we were talking about the process of how every day you're going to have to do what's right to make you better. And that's a multi-dimensional task in the sense that when I stand on the block and I'm racing and competing, I believe that the only way I'm going to be my best is that when I'm standing there, I believe that I've done every single thing possible that I could imagine or that anybody else does in the world or anybody else has thought of in the world, that I've done it or tried it to make me better. You know, whether that's my nutrition, whether my sleeping habits, flexibility, strength, aerobic capacity, everything. I'm trying to do every sense so that when I'm standing there, I'm confident that I've done more than any other person has done. And that goes along with training. You know, I don't just show up and attend practice because I'm supposed to be there. I'm looking at ways to make myself better. And I think that will help you rise from a standard level to a national level to Olympic level, always taking the next step by never thinking that you're doing everything.
Relate golf to fast swimming.
Well, golf is a mental game, just like swimming is. Oftentimes you find yourself, you're out there alone, and it takes a lot of focus, and there are a lot of distractions, but one thing you need to be able to do is to have your goal in mind and how you're going to get there. It's a process. You know, when you start from the tee to reach the green, there's a process. You know, starting from 30th in the world to get top in the world, there's a process. And you know, I wanted to follow that, and to follow that is a mental challenge.
Technique.
Perfection. There's a science, I believe, behind it. I'm not saying there's a technique for everyone, but there's a technique for each person. And that's what I'm trying to do, is find what technique is best for me. So I'm constantly changing and playing with my stroke to find out how I'm going to get from A to B fastest in the least amount of energy. And that's what I think directly relates to my ultimate performance. So my technique is going to be different from the next person's, but again, we're looking at what works perfect for me, and that's what I'm trying to get at.
Technology.
Incredibly advanced, especially in swimming, from video analysis to swimsuit technology. I don't think you can claim that swimming is advanced due to technology, but it has brought excitement to the sport. It's something that kind of keeps you pushing. You know, you always look to technology and science to make you better. I think that has to be part of the process. I think technology plays a huge role in swimming.
Music.
Hip hop, upbeat, stuff that gets me going to accomplish what I want. Anything that just gets that blood going to make me want to pursue those daily goals.
Tell me about tattoos.
They all have meaning to me, and one thing that a tattoo is permanent. I want something in my life that is going to be there forever, and they represent things that I think till the day I die are important to me and what I believe as a person, so they're a big part of me.
Is that why this one says, I will do whatever my coach tells me to do? That's my favorite personally.
Ed Moses, great stroke. You can see him make that final push to the wall.
When I'm swimming fast breaststroke, mentally what I'm trying to picture is that I could almost get into a cross position with my body flat on the water and my arms at 180 degrees. And my next instant is when I go for my in sweep, that my upper body and legs are going to follow a path over that point. Most of your weight is obviously in your core, and you're going to want to balance your core to feel that your legs and arms are just along for the ride and that they are just part of the stroke. The sense that I'm going through when I'm swimming breaststroke is that I want to be as long and have the least amount of drag possible, and I want to be as high on the surface as possible because this is obviously my fastest position in the stroke. Mentally, the image that I'm trying to get is that I want my body to come out and over the water with my hands below it after having a strong hold, and then immediately get into that long line position. So each time I want to replicate that, and our goal is, as fatigue sets in, we want to continue to replicate this as it would look in the beginning of the race compared to the end of the race. A visual that I try and reproduce is an anchoring of the legs and arms, and I'm just moving my body through those anchors. It's almost like if I were to have rings on the water that I would reach out and grab and pull my body through continually. And I want to do that at the least drag efficiency. I want to pull my body through the water and use the central part of my body as a strong aspect. Breathing has to be thought about, otherwise it becomes forced. You won't take your breath until you really realize you need it, and by that time you've gone into oxygen debt and it's probably too late. The important thing I think with breathing is that you don't create your breathing pattern with your head. You have an opportunity to breathe every stroke, and that can't be created by moving your head back and forth to get it out of the water. You have to maintain the back of the neck, the back, and the knee line. You have to maintain that straight line So when I think of breathing, I'm going to be coming out over the water. You know, I'm not going to be looking forward, I'm going to be looking over my hands and getting that breath right as I come out of the water, and then returning back to that long line position that we're talking about. So there's no head movement bobbing up and down to get air, because again, that's going to cause my hips to sink behind it. For every action, there's a reaction. If I lift my head, my hips are going to sink and we're getting back to that plow position. So ideally, we're keeping that line together that we're always looking for. I like to repeat to myself, kick your hands forward. That gives me a sense of not lifting too high out of the water and plowing, but allowing my kick to push me over top of that anchoring position and return to that long line position. So that's what I'm really trying to think about when I'm swimming, is get over my hands with my kick and continue to do that in a full range of motion, start to finish in a race. The goal is always to maintain a small knee integrity where I'm only minimally allowing my knees to separate rather than in an outward position, which would cause more drag, and to have the maximum amount of ankle catch possible. And we mimic that through tons of drills, foot resistance in the water, any position that we can get in that would mimic that, even push it beyond what my normal kick would be, I think translates to the water. A lot of that's done through stretching, through surgical tubing, through drills, through vertical kicking. We do all these drills that force that issue so I can remember it, and it becomes a second nature to me when I swim full breaststroke.
Look at that stroke, nice and long. Take advantage of that strong kick pads.
The kicking aspect of breaststroke is the most important aspect. That's where you're going to maintain your long line with a lot of power behind you. The stronger your kick, the longer you're going to be able to stay in that position. The anchoring with the kick, to me, would make sense that you want to force water backwards. There's a mistake with a lot of breaststrokers and their kick. They think that the breaststroke is a squeeze pattern, that you're going to drop your knees out and you're going to squeeze the water together behind you. But scientifically, it would make sense to me that you would bring your legs up and want to push the water backwards, because all your force will be in the opposite direction. That's an aspect that I think I've developed and applied to my stroke, which has allowed me to stay in that long line position. The unique part about a breaststroke kick is a combination of things. It's a combination of flexibility and a combination of strength. You will not have a successful breaststroke kick if you have one without the other. I think both of them are needed. To achieve this, you have to have maximal ankle flexibility for a good catch and good knee flexion to maintain a range of motions. With the combination of those two, our goal is to have maximal flexion, maximal ankle catch, and a force backward that's directly perpendicular to the stroke. And what's that going to allow is a huge force forward, allowing your body to continue moving forward in that line rather than up and down. When I'm kicking, and I'm kicking at my best, my philosophy is that I'm trying to force my ankles faster than my feet. So what that will allow will be maximal ankle flexion. By putting pressure on the outside of my feet, it would slow down the outside of my feet and allow my heels to move faster than the outside of my feet, and that would force a kick catch.
There you see just how much he's able to throw those hands out in front of him.
To emphasize the anchor and the streamline position, some of the drills we might do would be underwater swimming, maybe 3 pulls and a kick, and that'll be done with a straight body line. There will be no fluctuation of frequency. That line will stay straight, and a lot of that can be created by underwater swimming breaststroke. One of the things that we do in practice to maintain that long line integrity is a post-pull drill. This is going to replicate what I think helps me become a world-class swimmer in maintaining that line. Most of the time we do it with fins, and it's a posture position where either your hands are out in a streamlined position, you're laying on the water, or your hands are behind you. But the importance of a drill is to stay high on the water and really feel like your body is one, and that you're almost weightless, that you could just do one motion and your body could just maintain that velocity off that one motion forever.
This is a variation The hands leading the body, but they're very effortless, weightless out front, not moving, but just extending the core line and making him experience the balance position with his arms way out front.
We'll repeat that with a pulse pull, so you'll do that and then you'll take a pull of breaststroke and maintain that body position for an extended amount of time to know what it feels like to have that long position and to have long distance per stroke and a good glide. Imagine swimming like this through the water. Obviously the resistance is going to be a lot higher than swimming almost like a dolphin through the water. Some of the drills that we'll do to accomplish that is we'll separate the pull and the kick, and we'll stay in the streamline long position a lot longer. So I'll do a lot of breaststroke swimming underwater and eliminate any type of frequency where I'll try and maintain that line while pulling and kicking. The visual effect that we're creating is that we'll be able to move along through the water with minimal drag rather than forcing our way through the water.
The back position emphasizes the line from his shoulders to his knees. The polo kick allows him to just warm up his ankle flexion, one leg and ankle at a time.
Breaststroke has always been deemed a feel stroke. Your breaststroke is going to be its best when you feel like you're swimming and your technique is together. And these drills are done to replicate that feel of balance and positioning on the water that suit your body the best.
Again, there's a variation. The pull buoy keeping the knees somewhat closer. Like to get the kicks completely underwater so you feel the recovery through the finish of the kick. This can be kicked in a variety of positions, and this is just going back to kicking breaststroke on his back. And the pull buoy actually makes you concentrate harder on your line because it puts an artificial float. So he's got to press his back position even more.
Take the next step with your line. The first process is going to be through your arms. And what we're going to visualize here is an anchoring effect that comes through swimming with a tight core and arms that anchor in a position where you move your body over that anchor. We're going to emphasize that a lot by doing a lot of sculling in many different positions. Sculling where you're on your back, on your stomach, feet first. And that's done by slowing the stroke down and feeling your corners especially. A lot of people do skull drills but don't really know what they're doing in the process. What we're trying to maintain here is a recognition of where your hands are in the water and where they would be during your stroke. So we'll do a lot of sculling with your feet forward, your feet behind you, positions that you wouldn't normally recognize where your hands would be, but it's an awareness of the width of your pull and the strength of your anchor. So when you would go to swim after that, it would easily make it more recognizable what quadrant of the water your hands need to be in location of your body.
One of our sculling drills, one arm at a time, just working corner anchoring and feel and he's maintaining his core balance forward position. So he has to balance to get a great feel for it.
Everybody's gonna have a different catch with their arms, but whether you think you're pulling water, you're sculling it, it's the same sense that you're gonna be holding on to the water and moving your body beyond that hold position. There's certain drills that before a breaststroke set that I'll want to warm up with and get my ankles and knees involved so that when I am ready to go, it almost feels like I have a motor behind me that's directly perpendicular to my swimming line, that everything I'm doing with my kick relates to forward speed. Some of these drills are going to be wall kick, and what that does is allows extra pressure to be put against my ankles to force them in their flex position. Vertical kick the same way with, maybe weights or something to force you down, again, to stress this ankle position. So all these relate, I think, to that ankle position and total knee flexion. And what's that going to allow is a bigger range of kick, and that's going to keep that line long and increase your distance per stroke. There's one philosophy, and that's the fastest and furthest. As soon as you come off that block, it's got to be pure explosion. We're going to get in that long line. We're going to have a powerful pull out. And we're going to come up further and faster. That's the goal. I think the start is pretty individualized. I think you have to feel comfortable up there. First things first, you got to feel like you belong up there. The most important thing is you have to feel like as soon as that gun's off, all your energy can go directly into the water.
Turn. He's always so tight off his turns.
The technique of the turn is to reach the ultimate point, which is to get on the wall and off the wall the fastest. And that to me is done by coming in on a full stroke, touching with both hands, immediately dropping one elbow and driving the knees up to the wall. And after that's done, a perfect turn can be executed with a strong push-off and a long line. And again, we're talking about that long line. The least amount of resistance is going to get you further on every pull-out. To emphasize the amount of time spent in these positions is a huge part of the race, and a lot of people don't realize that. I'll work my pull-outs and turns to the point where I can come up within half a yard in about 0.1 or 0.2 of a second. That's a repetition that I practice, so when the race comes along, I can simulate this in an easy manner. Just eliminating 0.1 or 0.2 off your turn is going to get you a faster time. That's something without even work that you're going to have to do. It's easy time that you should emphasize perfection on the walls.
Heroes.
Someone that I think portrays me, again, along the lines of similarity, is Steve Prefontaine. Something Prefontaine had was that ability to just love and have a passion for a sport and be willing to do anything that he possibly could to become his best. He ate, breathed, everything was around his running, and he was always trying to find a way to be better. And I think that's what I'm trying to do in the same sense. I think that's very important to take your swimming or any sport to another level, is to have such a passion for it that you're always looking for an answer as what can make you better.
What is it that was so unique or so instinctual about your racing technique that you now emphasize and bring to practice on a routine basis?
Like we said, I had to take that race stroke that I had developed and that I had a natural ability when competition was on the line, and I had to pursue that in practice if I was going to get better. And what that was my ability to use my strength and size for powerful strokes, getting in distance per stroke, and that was done through maximizing my line. And when I'm saying my line, I'm saying that I want to be in the least resistance position as possible while I'm swimming, and that's my streamlined position. So I wanted to use my pull and kick and perfect a technique that allowed me to be in that long line the most amount of time. And what that was developing strength, my aerobic capacity to have that in practice and to be able to mirror image what I was doing in competitions for a longer period of time in training, and that would relate to me becoming a better breaststroker.
So how do you bring freshness to a sport that has so much repetition?
Short-term challenges. That's the only way. You can't sit there on Monday and say, this weekend I want to do this X amount of time. You got to sit there on Monday and say, tonight at practice I want to do this. And if I don't do this, that's not going to allow me to do what I want to do on Saturday. Come Tuesday, you got to repeat the process. So you got to look at each day as a new day and a new challenge. And I don't look at it as the big picture because, again, not many people can swim and stare at a black line for 5 hours. It's a draining process, but you have to find little tasks each day that excite the athlete.
Your mental side. Tell me a little bit about how you set up the mental side of your approach, both to training and certainly to the best performance possible.
Well, the mental side, like you said, is just as demanding as the physical side. I feel like, when I come to practice, that's almost the easy part. That, any physical demand you throw at me, I'm going to give it my best. But there are mental aspects that involve sacrifice and effort and where they're going in your life. You can't just go out there and work hard every day and give it your all and expect that that's going to do it. There are ups and downs with everything. I think if you try and minimize those and see the big picture and realize that there are other things in life that are just as important to you, you can have a peace of mind and continue on with that path.
And tell me once again who your favorite face to see is at 4:30 in the morning.
My favorite face to see at 4:30 in the morning is the back of my eyelids, because I don't get up that early, first of all. An important aspect of cross-training swimming with dryland is that you maintain the integrity of your stroke. A lot of the work that I'll do here will be emphasized particularly in paralleling what I do in the water. We want work that is specific and directed towards what we want. So by coming up with a dryland routine that directly mirrors what the stroke would look like or what we're trying to achieve in the water, I think we have increased performance. Everything that I do in dryland has an impact directly on my stroke, whether it's knee flexion, ankle flexion, maintaining the core line, anything that I think is going to overload the body, so when I swim breaststroke, it's going to feel like I'm floating. Toys that I use are just going to reinforce our philosophy with breaststroke, with the kick and the pull. They're just going to put resistance in the motion that we're trying to stress, so it's an overload. Stretch cord attached to a bucket. They obviously made this one a little easy by putting some holes in the bottom. If I'm stressing them to a higher range of degree than I would when I'm swimming, my body will adjust to that and feel like that range is being adapted into my stroke. Probably one of my more favorite ones is the stretch cord. This is going to attach to my waist, and as you can imagine, tied into pretty much a leash. I'll use anything that will force my ankle position to be more extreme than normal, anything to force my knee position to be more than normal. It's your standard weight belt. This one feels like it's about 10 pounds, anything to feel my line more than normal. So what we're trying to do is overload these areas so that when I do swim the stroke, they feel natural and strong to me at the same time. I mean, you name it, as long as it's making me tired, we're using it.
We began with a standard paddle and just used finger tubing to strap it on somewhat awkwardly to the inside of the foot to create more resistance when he kicked in breaststroke.
What I saw in that was similar to what you see with any type of training. You put a resistance somewhere where you want it, you stress that resistance, and then you build up strength to it.
Ed tailored the cut to the contour of his ankle.
I readjusted the holdings, sawed it down, put some cool designs on it to make it unique to myself, and this thing worked.
Now with a better fit and positioning new holes for extra finger tubes, you're going to have a more refined engineered kick paddle for breaststrokers.
A squeeze method would not work with these paddles. What we're trying to do is have a full flexion with a pushback and a close, and this paddle allowed that, and that was a huge step, I think, to developing my kick. The breaststroke kicking machine, it's the same concept we're trying to achieve here, is resistance against the ankles in the kick to develop strength in your kick.
First time he used it, he came back and said that the tension coming off the heel didn't create pressure the way he'd like to feel the kick.
So when you went to kick, the tension was coming from an ankle point that really wasn't relevant to your kick. It was just more relevant to an extension. You can get that same force by going in the weight room. So we re-engineered it so that the point of tension was coming from the outside of the foot. Okay, and what this allowed was when the tension were to tighten and you would have to pull against it, it would flex your foot out in the proper breaststroke position. You can't go into a weight room and reproduce the kick like you can in the water, so we want to put the resistance in the same fashion that the kick is, and this toy is allowing us to do that. The paddles are allowing us to do that. It would reproduce the effect of a resistance training against this ankle flexed kick that allows for when I take this off, I'm going to feel exactly like you would if you were swimming with paddles when you take it off, that you have a good catch and you're maximizing your range of motion.
Has anybody ever beat you in challenges on those toys?
I don't let that happen. There's no way. There's a combination of ways of putting this catch, this anchoring of your hands, and this direct kick with your pull. There's a timing.
102.7 though, right on world record pace.
The timing is where all the power comes from. We're gonna take a full pull into an explosive kick that's gonna allow for the fastest and strongest position I have in my entire stroke. I have a certain stroke count that I follow in practice, regardless of the distance, regardless of the effort, regardless of the speed. And it's there day in and day out, and I acknowledge it. I don't just let it happen. I have good clock awareness, and I maintain stroke counts that I know throughout practice. I'm not just going through the motions again. I understand what I'm doing. What you want to do is feel your stroke, and obviously that's going to be unique to you, but the crucial part is the timing between your pull and your kick. And what I think about when I'm swimming breaststroke is that I want to kick my hands forward and get into the streamlined, long line position more time than anybody else. So that's the philosophy that I think, is that I want to anchor and kick my body forward over that anchor to allow for maximum distance per stroke. Two things we're gonna look at here is the line position and the leg draw. We're gonna pause it right here and show you that from end to end, we're looking at a straight line. That's the core line that we've been talking about. You wanna be as tight as you can be and as long as you can be, because we're maximizing the straight there. Follow the red line from the tip of my fingers to my toes. That's what we want. That's that core body line that we're talking about. The next important thing that we're going to analyze is the knee flexion and ankle flexion. Right there is what we're looking at. The angle right there, the knee flexion. We're trying to maximize that knee flexion to have a huge range in our kick. It's allowing about 15 degrees of flexion in there, and then our ankles are going to be flexed out as much as we can. This is going to allow for the greatest amount of water to be moved. And as we proceed a little further, what we're going to watch is my ankles right there. See how the ankle has totally been flexed out. It's perpendicular to the leg. And at that point, we're catching the most water. And then we're going to follow through into a full kick and return exactly to that position that we talked about, the straight line position. After the kick, we're going to lead into the pull, which is going to be our anchoring position. We have the straight line, as showed here, and the next thing we're going to do is going to want to anchor the arms at a point away from the body. So the point here is to hold as much water as you can at these anchor points and pull the core through these anchors. Just like I said, we're going to pull. Imagine that you have a ring and you're grabbing it and pulling the core line through. I'm going to anchor as wide as I can. That's a feel. And my next step that I'm going through in my head is I'm going to pull my body over my hands by holding the water. So at this point right now, I'm holding the water, concentrating on keeping my line, holding my head over my hands so I can breathe. And the next step is getting the hands out of the way, and I'm thinking about maximum flexion in my knees immediately after. After that step, ankle flexion. Right now I'm thinking about pushing back as much water as I can while maintaining this straight line through my core. That's going to be the fastest position that I can be in. I'm going to finish the full kick, that's my goal, and return back to the straight line and start all over again. The next step through my head again. Anchor. I'm going to push wide with my hands, holding the water, keeping my head in line, and then again, back to that step. I'm going to be kicking my head over top of this anchor and then returning to that fast position. Head over hands, straight line, kicking the hands forward. That's what's going through my head while I'm swimming.
Do you think you know the perfect stroke count, the perfect tempo that you need to bring out for the perfect race?
No, I don't think so. I answer that no because if I did, I would have done it by now. And I'm not going to set that limit on myself. I don't think there's ever a perfect race. I think there's too many factors involved in swimming that there will ever be a perfect race. But at the same time, I'm trying to achieve the best possible race that I can at that moment. And before that moment, I'm trying to set myself up to believe that I've done everything possible. And that's the sense that I think you have, that you can be at your best, but you can never be perfect, because we're getting back to that point that you can't rest on what you've done. You know, there's always more to be had.